Hi, Evelyn. Welcome back to the podcast for our astrology update for the month of August.
Hi,
Thank
thanks
you
for having
so
me.
much for being here. Yes, thank you. We're right now in the end of July, and it feels like things are really shifting. So I'm super interested on what's coming for
Mhm.
for August. So where should we start?
Let's start with the new and full moons.
Perfect.
So I'll go ahead and share my screen and we can take a look at the full moon in Aquarius, which is on the 1st of August.
Oh,
So,
wow. We start off with a bang.
yeah, so we have three moon cycles or two full moons and one new moon for the month of August. It is a longer month. And also, we start out with the full moon at the very beginning. So, the full moon on August 1st is at 11:31 a.m. And that's going to be at 9 degrees Aquarius. So 9 degrees, 15 minutes Aquarius, and it features a T square with Jupiter and a slight in conjunct with Saturn. But the biggest one is going to be, of course, the Jupiter T square. And
Right.
Jupiter has been in its fixed position, making a lot of aspects to the planets throughout the month because of, we're in Leo season now. So all the planets going through Leos or any of the fixed signs are going to get hit with either Uranus or Jupiter. And then soon after Pluto, once Pluto comes back into Aquarius. So the fixed cross every season, every fixed sign season, which is Leo, Scorpio, Aquarius, or Taurus, is going to be a pretty active time.
Right, and it's been feeling like that. Just very, just seeing all the cross energy and all the kind of oppositions and stress, it feels like a pressure point, like when you're building a diamond, it's like this intense pressure is what it feels like. So
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what crosses and oppositions and squares do for us is to create that energy that we need in order to manifest something. The trines are wonderful and we all want trines
yeah,
in
I
our
I
chart
know.
for the easy flow and access to skills and talents, but it's really the squares, crosses, and oppositions that make things happen.
Right, right. So for like the US chart, what would this kind of mean for the collective and what's going on in the world?
But let's take a look at the US chart. I can pull up the that screen and we can take a look at it. Let's see. Charts. I don't have your chart. I was looking for it though.
Oh,
Here. I would. Well, I was surprised I don't have your chart. I have
I'll have to
everyone's
I'll have
chart.
to give it to you.
Okay, here is the United States chart. And then when we take a look at the full moon on August 1st. So, interestingly, that is going to activate the United States nodes. So, it will be interesting for the US in terms of the direction that it's going to go in. So, it might be a decision making moment for the United States or whatever is happening within Congress to come to some sort of ultimate conclusion or ultimatum. Oppositions are typically energy where we have to choose between one thing or another, or balance or compromise between two things. So it tends to not be, either go too far one way or the other, or you split them in half and then compromise for both. That's the general resolution attempt with opposition. So full moons are similar in that way, where especially if it's activating the nodes, there's a very strong need to make a decision for the United States. And it's in the houses of value money, finance, debt. So
Mm.
there may be something around the debt ceiling or um, the way that the finances are managed that will have to be there will have to be a decision
How
that's made.
interesting. And then with that South Node Libra, that's that we have going on, right? So making decisions might be it's almost like an how would you describe that? Because in my mind, South Node Libra is like don't compromise, right? You focus on what you need and you go in that direction. It's much more aggressive with that North Node in Aries.
There is, yeah, definitely more of a, what needs to be done in the moment without like weighing out the pros and cons as much. It's more of a we need to act now kind
Mhm.
of energy rather than sitting here thinking about all the possible potential options and ways and avenues. And Aries North Node is like, no, we don't have time for this. We just have to bite the bullet, make a decision, move forward, end of story.
Right, right. Okay. That I mean, that makes total sense because I feel like we're going through so much financially, that it's feels illusionary, but also like it's hitting a breaking point here.
Yeah, what have you been noticing? Because I haven't been keeping track of any news media actually this whole
Mm.
month.
Wow, that's impressive. That's
Yeah,
that's
except for
impressive.
except for the aliens, that's the only thing I've been keeping up with.
Have you the alien stuff? Well, I feel like the alien stuff feels a little distractionary,
Mhm.
and then there's other stuff that well, with the money. I mean, the money is the truth really being in the way I'm seeing it is that there is no money left to give and you have the writers on strike and now you have the actors on strike and then you have not postal workers but the UPS drivers potentially going on strike August 1st, which is this day.
Right, right,
So what would that mean for something like that?
which is debts and money owed and joint resources. So the 8th house for the United States would definitely signify this, Leo North Node is in there for the US. And so what's interesting is that the South Node would represent what the United States naturally and inherently has a capacity for, which looks like socialism to me. South Node Aquarius in the second house of money and finance, which is having
Mm,
this perspective of resource material as being an equal goods service or something that should be shared amongst all people. But actually, the United States is moving into a Leo North Node in the 8th house, which is opposite of that perspective,
yes,
which is more like, well, this is our money, and this is, we're going to control our money
that's
for
right.
all of us together.
That's yes. And that makes so much more sense to me, but I think there's a lot of people that, maybe it's a more Aquarian belief system of like, for everyone, for humanity and all of that. It's like we really need to focus on the people that are in our country that are paying these taxes that need certain services or they need to have roads we can drive on and things like that. I mean, it's really interesting. um yeah, it's really interesting that you say that because I mean, with the stuff with the writer's strike, they I was talking to somebody the other day about it, and they said, "Well, the government's got to have to step in here." And I'm just thinking, you're in delusion. There's no money left to go out and give these massive amounts of money to, all these people who are now out of work.
Hmm. The South Node Aquarius would be that draining of financial resource for the sake of creating an equitable and fair playing ground.
Mhm.
And it may be that this is a period where, especially with the full moon activating that axis in the US chart, of figuring out a way to balance those needs, but also how to propel productivity for the sake of the power structures that the US holds. Also, Leo and, well, all the fire signs have a correlation or connection to military and
Mhm.
force. And, Leo
Yes.
ruled by the sun, which is, when we look at mundane astrology, is the leader or the ruler. And then Aries ruled by Mars, of course, which is martial, like the
Oh,
military,
yeah, the warrior.
the warrior, the hero. So, with the North Node in Aries in the fifth house of the United States chart, then we're focusing now on, well, how are we going to lift up and help those people, the heroes, the
Mm.
warriors, but also there's going to be a big focus on um, just how the aid has been maybe funneled towards
First.
those areas, such
Right.
as military. And yeah, there just might be a conflict within the US of when it comes to aid for social programs or the military. And that's probably going to be the big um, compromise that needs to happen.
That makes sense. That's totally and what feels like the everybody going on strike, and so with what would looking at the charts, I'm curious to see some of more charts going on during August, but you know, uh, things like television, movies, media programming, kind of not having new content come fall. And then if there is a UPS strike, so all of us retailers are really, at least some of us are pretty aware of it. And so it's like, how do you get your holiday merchandise now so you have stuff
Oh,
to sell
yeah.
for that season, right? It's like, oh,
Right.
that's a whole wrench in the game plan that we are totally not used to, right?
Hmm.
So it's like, okay, well, I just ordered Christmas stuff right now when usually it arrives in September. I want to take it now in July.
Which I think was similar to what happened during the pandemic, right? The shipping got all
Shipping
messed up.
got funny, but that was really if you were ordering overseas,
Because there
right?
was that whole thing, either there was a backup at the ports in LA, but wasn't there also a strike?
There was, yeah, I think you're right. I think there was something, but it didn't affect my local vendors. So like the people who used like local UPS or the postal service, I was still able to get like anything made in California or anything that was kind of not too far.
Oh,
So we
right.
were able to sustain. But this is so funny because I was thinking about, just even looking at who does ship to us. Most stores, it's usually UPS. It's not usually the postal service because those are smaller packages and things like that. So the bigger ones do come through the UPS trucks.
Hmm.
So it'll be interesting to see what happens with that on the first
Yeah,
with the full
absolutely.
moon. With the full moon, that's amazing.
Yeah. So yeah, that T square hits also the sixth house. So Jupiter moving into
Mm,
the sixth house of the US chart, which is employees, employment,
wow.
um, landlords also, and uh, coworkers. So just daily work, the daily kind of blue collar work that maintains the everyday processes of the, you know,
The world.
of the
So,
world. Yeah.
and yeah, so it's coming to that Uranus. So kind of expect uh, uh sudden changes and sudden,
Mhm.
eruptions
This
there.
is especially with Uranus in the sixth house for the next like 5 years. That's
Right.
probably going to be how it is, just in terms of all avenues and all industries at some point will experience some kind of disruption to their daily process, because Uranus going through the sixth house can guarantee that there's going to be massive shifts and changes and big, also, the way I see it too in Taurus was all of the big pilgrimages that change. So, like
Oh,
industry moving from one area or one location over to another, and just like how the tech industry completely moved from
mhm.
California to Texas and Arizona, which shifts the
Yes.
whole population from one area to another. That's Uranus, Taurus in the United States, sixth house for sure. And then having Uranus and Gemini in the sixth house, the whole AI, the shift to AI. And I think that it's really important that the writers on strike now, especially because of AI, with the potential of it taking jobs away, but also it could be a big risk because since they're all on strike, now would be a really opportune time for these
Yes.
companies to start
Implementing.
experimenting with
Mhm.
script writing by AI.
Yes. Yeah, you're on the 100%. That's exactly what I was feeling, because it was like they anybody who's thinking they're bailing them out is gonna be misled, because they don't really need these people if they're going the route of the AI route, uh, that is now starting to write scripts, starting to write shorts, starting to, do those things.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
that's so interesting you're saying that. Okay.
So
So
yeah.
what's
Uranus
next after the first? Let's
with okay, let's
Yeah.
see. We've got let me share the screen to our other moon. The new moon in Leo is August 16th at 2:38 a.m. And with the new moon now at this point, we have Venus in her morning star phase.
Mhm.
So there's a bit of a connection with Venus for the new moon, which is a really lovely energy. Always new moons where we tend to want to do introspection, be with ourselves, be internal, experience our subconscious and inner realms. But Leo is always an interesting new moon time because I think that people want to figure out ways of connecting to themselves, and but for the sake of sharing with other people or for the sake of
Right.
what do they have to offer other people? What gifts do you have that you would want to share with other people? And it's also a really lovely time to explore self love,
Mm.
radical self love, whatever that means, complete and whole self acceptance, in order to acknowledge those special skills and traits that you have that maybe you're just, complacent with at this point. I think it's a really beautiful time to explore all the nuances and subtle ways that make you uniquely you, and to elevate your relationship to those skills and talents that, sometimes we just take for granted.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I feel Leo, because it is ruled by the sun, it's happiness. I mean, it's what really truly makes you happy and what you want to. And just looking at the chart for the new moon, it being, kind of there in that second house, what of value truly makes you happy? Like, what is your heart saying? Um,
Mhm.
Especially with Venus there, even though the Venus is retrograde, I see a nice trine going on, which is good to see.
Yeah. Yeah, with a nice we've got an Earth trine,
Shift.
um,
Yeah.
between Pluto and Uranus and, Virgo, Mars and Mercury and Virgo. It's a loose trine, but it's still
Yeah.
a strong Earth trine, and Earth trines allow us to access our, um, connection to the material plane, also feeling in flow
Mm.
with what we have to do on a day-to-day basis. It's just things seem to fit, or things seem to just connect very smoothly. With the Venus retrograde, of course, there's that review of relationships and review of yourself and
Yeah.
relationships and consideration for whether or not you are getting what your needs are. However, it's acknowledging, not just putting that projection onto the other person of whether or not that person is giving me what I need, but whether or not I am figuring out positive ways of getting what I need from other people.
That's such a beautiful way of saying it, because I know this Venus retrograde is a huge shift for a lot of relationships and a lot of people, and people should really be paying attention to the relationships in their lives and wherever this does fall, and how those relationships are, either, I don't know, there's something with happiness. So I feel like there's a connection between the two for sure. But there's, it's almost like, don't start a new it feels like you need there's no if you start a relationship during this time, it will shift by the time that Venus goes direct.
Right.
It's not the best time to start a new relationship. It's much more of a revision of what's making you really happy, and it's not about the other person making you happy. It's about what internally you're doing, or allowing to continue occurring, that's making you happy or not happy. Instead of, maybe we start to look at that North Node in Aries and start to really be strong in how we feel about things, and say, this doesn't work for me. Either we're going to work on it, or we're done. Like, it's okay to end something, and if it's truly not what your heart is desiring or what it wants for a long-term relationship. um, what do you think? Yeah, what would you say on the relationship aspect of, because it looks like even here with the new moon, I mean, it's highlighting. It feels like it's almost like highlighting all the relationship stuff with that Venus retrograde that's going to be going on.
Yeah, and then there's the square to Uranus for the new moon. So the full moon, we had a T square with Jupiter. This time now we're meeting Uranus, which is the planet of disruption and change and chaos. But that Uranus is also part of a grand trine with Pluto and Mars. So I see it as being very productive, and that whatever is changing or shifting in dynamics, to be very aware of that and to utilize every skill and trait that you have
Mm.
to emphasize the need for those changes or acceptance of those changes more so, because the Uranus is, like you said, it's coming in to disrupt and change, and also allow you to see what parts of yourself are, one, maybe these are all Leoan themes,
Yeah.
are placing your sense of self-worth on another person, or projecting your needs outside into other people's spaces rather than taking accountability for you, actively, North Node Aries,
Right.
accessing those needs yourself rather than, again, waiting for another person to do those things for you, South Node Libra.
Mm.
So I think, yeah, it's taking accountability, really. It's taking accountability for your relationships, where you show up, and how you show up for the other person. And also, because I just see so much rhetoric right now,
Yeah.
which is like, do you, uh, there's a lot of pro independence, individuality, which is great, but also it's not totally acknowledging the person's responsibility when it comes to those relationships. It's kind of like,
Mm.
well, if they don't meet X, Y, and Z requirements, then they're out. Rather
Yeah.
than, well, what are you doing or what are you contributing to the relationship? So that's the Aries focus that I'm
Oh,
like
interesting. Okay.
seeing more of, or with this North Node, South
Mhm.
Node, Leo, Libra experience of like, yeah, what are you doing though? Like looking at your own
Okay.
actions and seeing how your actions contribute to a relationship and only focusing on that.
I see. That's great. That's good. Yeah, that's a really good point. Um,
Mhm.
especially because, even how I'm saying it, yeah, it's like wanting to project it, not totally project it on the other, but it's almost like this has been going on. I'm looking at just, you know, how relationships have things that happen and you kind of continue going on with them. It's like, okay, well, they do this and I'm just going to live with it. And then right now I feel like it comes up again for like a revision. Like,
Oh yeah.
remember, you already knew they did this. This was already a pattern of behavior. It's now very apparent, and you either have to make a decision of, yes, I will continue to go along with this or ignore it, or I will face it and try to make a change, whether it's trying to, have a conversation about it and making some change there, or it's making the complete change of, ending something.
Yeah, yeah. And Leo is all about being true to yourself
Yes.
too. Yeah. So that's a nice trine, the new moon trine to the North Node, which is accessing that truth, like that personal truth.
Right. Right. I mean, I love Leo. But it is on my seventh house. So people who have it in kind of it's like reflection. So it's not what I innately was born knowing, right? I didn't necessarily know my heart or what my
Mm.
heart wanted. It would be my partner or the other person would have that. And then I would have to kind of look at them and learn how to be that way. And go, oh,
Yeah. Typically, the seventh house, yeah, is that what you seek in other people.
mm-hmm.
Because it's just an attraction. I don't know if it's necessarily any because you lack it or because you don't inherently have it, but it's something that you are attracted to for whatever reason.
Right.
Hmm.
Right. I would say
Definitely.
it wasn't, yeah, no, I wouldn't say it wasn't that something I had, but it would be something I would seek in that if the other person loved me, right? Oh, then I could feel love. Like
Mm.
it was a very, and there's other aspects I'm sure in my chart that play into that, but it was very Aquarian, just like very detached and my own self and unique in my own way. But it was this bringing in that Leo energy that really
Mm.
um, helped me feel like, oh, the love doesn't have to come from another person; it can be internal,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So oh, this is interesting. I like this chart. Anything
Yeah.
else coming up after that?
Well, we also have the full moon at the end of the month, so we can take a look at the full moon chart on August 30th,
Oh,
which is
wow.
at 6:35 p.m. We also have, of course, other aspects happening this month, but just for the moons, the full moon now in Pisces, so we'll be in Virgo season at this point, and the full moon will be at 7 degrees 25 minutes Pisces, with Saturn very close by at 3 degrees. And the moon isn't making, let's see, any aspects to any other of the main planets. And the sun is only making an opposition to that Saturn. So Saturn plays a really big role in
Mhm.
this. And so the Saturn Pisces that we've all been navigating and experiencing, which we've mentioned and dove into a bit when Saturn
Yeah.
entered Pisces originally. So themes around boundaries, Saturn, Pisces, boundaries, your spiritual connection, also how you navigate your subconscious world.
Mhm.
Also, Saturn and Pisces is kind of linked with the solemn, nostalgic, or stoic, melancholy energy. So, a bit of um, a desire of the past, or Pisces represents the end, essentially, or
Mhm.
the reflection of all of the experiences. So when Saturn is here, it's got that solemn, elderly energy of like, wow, look at how far we've come. Look at all the things that we've done. Look at all the things I've accomplished at this
Mhm.
point. What else is there? Which can, at some points, drive people into that needing something deeper of spiritual connection. So it's not placing as much weight on the external successes, but
Right.
on your internal successes as an individual human in the world, your bigger successes. Like, what are you here to do on a soul level? So, with the full moon in Pisces, it's the time to manifest that or take action towards actualizing your bigger dreams and desires out of this world as a soul being versus what your main production value is
Mm.
as a citizen of this earth.
Right. Oh, that's so interesting. Yeah, I mean, in Saturn moon, always I feel like it's kind of a depressed moon. Um,
Mhm.
but I mean that can be interpreted in many different ways. Um,
Yeah, it
does that
might just be wanting to do things on your own, or maybe that's just a time when you want to have more introspection or do something that's spiritually pleasing or connecting. So,
right? How often do you have, two full moons in a month?
not often, but whenever the full moons or new moons start, at the beginning of a season, we tend
Mhm.
to get, which we've been having, been having a lot of new and full moons sort of at the end or beginning of the signs. So we've been having a lot of these double ups throughout the last couple of years. But yeah,
Yeah,
not
I
very
feel like it
often.
yeah, I feel like it's not I mean, I don't notice it being that often, but
What is it? Isn't a blue moon two full moons in 1 month?
is it? Well, then we would
I
be
think
having a blue moon?
I think so. I can't remember the exact term
Hmm,
for a blue moon. I can't remember if I'm pretty sure it's 2 because there's no way there would be 3.
that
So
would be
it's gotta be
insane,
2.
right? I mean, to make it really wild, have, 2 new moons and 2 full moons, yeah.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Would
So I
feel
do think I think it's a blue moon because that's, yeah, the term once in a blue moon.
yeah, and this might be that month,
Yeah.
right?
So we can go ahead and take a look at, so we've got a few other things.
Okay.
We have those are the 3 moons that we'll be meeting. On August 13th, the Venus will be conjunct the Sun, which will
Mhm.
start her phase as the morning star. So I'll go ahead and share that
I
screen
love
with
that.
you so we can take a look at that point. And morning star Venus. So she's
Aw.
been the evening star for the last few months, and every retrograde cycle she moves back into morning star and then eventually starts to fall back into her evening star phase. And this cycle is one that's heavily connected to mythology. Venus has
Yeah.
been strongly associated with many different deities throughout all different cultures. When Venus turns into her morning star phase, she is shifting her identity into a an unkept woman is what I call her. Like she's
Oh.
she's like she cannot be contained. She is wildly free, uninhibited. People who are born with morning star Venus oftentimes will share those types of qualities, especially when it's retrograde of um yep, can't be told what to do, will express their sexuality and femininity in ways that they
Mm.
find appropriate for them. It's in Leo, which is obviously the most flamboyant sign of them all. So this might
Right.
be a really powerful time for the LGBTQ plus community,
Oh,
for
interesting.
self-expression, to be seen, to be acknowledged. So we might see, I mean, we've of course been, there's been a lot of dialogue and rhetoric,
Right.
how many decades by now, but there will be a lot more expression coming out. And also with Saturn in Pisces, is the last time Saturn was in Pisces was when gay marriage was first legal,
Really?
which wasn't that long ago, in the 90s.
Was it in the 90s? Yeah, I
Yeah.
felt wow.
I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that it hasn't been that long. So just some perspective on that. And when Venus
Right.
goes retrograde in Leo, I think there's going to be much more exposure, much more acceptance, or we'll just see more, divine feminine expressions of
Yeah.
sexuality.
That's so interesting. It looks like it's a kite. Is that a kite formation?
With
The moon? Oh,
Mars.
moon, Uranus, Mars, Pluto.
So Pluto, which is of course also a very big planet for sexual liberation,
Oh, is
is a part
it?
of that kite.
It has a
hmm Taboos, sexual liberation, anything
mm,
that's connected to, taboos or
that 8th house. Yeah.
sacred, yeah, secret behaviors, what we
So
keep
interesting.
hidden from others.
Right.
hmm Um, so yeah, that'll be probably a really entertaining time,
Yeah,
inspiring time.
it looks like a fun to me, that looks like a fun day. Um,
It does. Let's see, when does she go direct? So Venus goes direct September 3rd.
right?
And so she'll be very much in the morning phase. So that means that we'll be able to see her in the morning shining brightly before the sun until
Mhm.
for the next essentially until through fall. Um after she hits that direct phase, or the direct um movement path, then she'll start to fall back down towards the sun. So this will be
Mhm.
the height. This is when she'll be the brightest in the morning.
Oh,
hmm
and then
So,
okay.
yes, and then let's see, what else do we have? We have Mercury stationing retrograde on the 23rd. So let me go back to that day for
Oh, and
us.
Taurus?
Yes. So Mercury
Oh,
in
no, in Virgo.
Virgo. So Mercury in Virgo turning retrograde on the 23rd, which is also the same day that the sun enters Virgo. So the sun enters Virgo, and then
Oh,
shortly
wow.
after, here we go, at 1:50-ish p.m. when Virgo or Mercury stations retrograde. So, as they say, communications, data, information, and especially since it's in Virgo, which has to do with our day-to-day communications and
Mhm.
day-to-day activities, and plans
And health.
and health, yes,
Mhm.
absolutely, and logistics. It's to double check all of your resources, double check
Mhm.
all of your information. If you do have especially doctor's visits or doctors or hospital or what have you, checkups planned during the phase of Mercury retrograde during that time, be very mindful that it could potentially be information that you might just want to get a second opinion on or check in with someone else or just making sure because since we're all under the influence of Mercury retrograde and since many healthcare workers will have a lot of
Yes.
Virgo, usually Virgo and Cancer in their charts, then you just want to be very cognizant that we're all fallible and we all have we're all under the influence of Mercury retrograde. So, um, you know, just making sure that
Good.
the info is accurate that you're
Right.
receiving.
Right. No, that's really good to know because because it's its home sign, I feel like it'll be more intense.
A tome sign?
Like it's home.
Oh,
So
home sign.
yeah, because it rules Gemini and Virgo. That's always a more potent Mercury retrograde.
Yeah, yeah. So, yep, just double check everything. Make sure that you know that everyone's on the same plane, on the same page. Maybe send out reminders.
Right.
People don't
Yes.
forget.
It's always a good thing. So what does this look like in the US chart as well for this time? Maybe there'll be something that comes through for um, some of
So
these current strikes.
Virgo is the 10th house in the United States chart. So that's a very great question. And Mercury will also turn retrograde on the United States Neptune.
Ah,
So the information that is
interesting.
being presented or
Will will be illusionary or
it might not necessarily be direct or honest or fully all the information might not be the full truth,
okay.
might not be the whole truth, or it might be shrouded in illusion.
Mm.
Which when you think about it, oh my gosh, of course the United States has Neptune in the 10th house.
It makes so much sense, doesn't it?
It
It's like
does. They're
it's
like illusory,
mhm.
imaginary fantasy that is projected out to the world stage for their productivity and progress, which is Virgo. But it also might be with Mercury retrograde, some information that comes to light or is expressed through the any deceptive or shadow aspects of Neptune in the 10th
Okay.
house. So it might
Right.
be that there's like, well, there might be, and especially with the sun going through the ninth house and Venus retrograding through the ninth house, some publication or information that comes out that is truthful, that's
Mm,
underground. So the ninth house, which connects us to publication, broad communications, outreach, information that spans through vast lands. The third house is communication that is central to a smaller subset or a smaller group. So, Saturn going through the third house of the United States chart of communication, of course, makes a lot of sense. Twitter, I
mhm.
just saw today,
What?
Elon Musk announced that it's going through a rebrand. So,
Uh-huh.
it's being rebranded as X. And It's no longer Twitter, so Twitter's dead. Twitter is officially died.
What?
It's over. It's now a new
Oh gosh.
company, and Saturn, which
Mhm.
is can be connected to death, in the third house of communication and information, where the moon
Wow.
is changing how we are going to start to talk to one another and adjust, yeah, how people share information. So Mercury retrograde too in the US 10th house. It'll be really interesting to see
Mhm.
what transpires.
That's so interesting. I didn't know he just shared that. Um, I do know that they had some questionable people that he had hired to run the company. So that was a thing. That was a thing for a minute, but then it got really squashed and quiet. So
Mhm.
we'll see what happens.
Yeah, which really the only reason why it's such a big deal is because we have elections next year.
Mhm.
And Twitter played such a huge role in disseminating information
Yes.
around political campaigns. So that's really the only reason why it's such a big deal for the United States, that especially Saturn going through the third house during an election cycle, is that we just might not get the information. We just might be less subject to the information that we need to
Make
make
a decision.
decisions. Hmm.
Well, I feel like they've done that a lot since, taking down, like, Tucker Carlson, and there's a lot of voices that they just pulled. They
Oh
pulled,
yeah,
completely off air. So
yeah.
that's just really interesting. You're making a point of note. It's harder to find the information, like,
Hmm.
and the truth, right? Because they're repressing so much. Um,
Yeah. Yep. And Saturn's been going through the third house for like the last year
mhm.
and a half, which coincides with all of these changes that we've been seeing with social media and the discourse around the importance of social media, which is the United States moon placement, moon in Aquarius. So we are the communicators. Like, we naturally have a desire and a need to share information and connect through technology and the airwaves and
Right.
social media. So yeah, that's going to be um, hard to find outlets for that, or it just might be a bit disheveled while we figure out how to move forward.
Okay. That's wild.
Hmm. And then also what happens is Mars enters Libra on the 27th.
Oh,
So,
wow, really?
hmm so we have, here we go, Mars entering Libra. So we're going to have a Mars conjunct South Node Libra
Mhm.
this year, opposite the North Node. So everyone's going to get to know how I feel. Everyone gets to know how it feels.
That's so interesting. Is that what that is when it's opposite North Node?
I mean, well, Mars in my chart is on my South Node
Oh,
in Libra.
perfect.
And it's going to be the frustrating, constant ruminating over what to do,
Mhm.
because you consider everyone's opinions all the time and you can't
Oh,
not know what someone thinks once you already know what they think. So try making a decision for yourself where you
wow.
already have the awareness of how another person may or may not react.
That's
Yeah.
interesting.
So
That's
try it.
so interesting. Yeah, I know. Try it. You'll get to. It's coming
Good.
up here.
Tell me how it
Um,
goes.
yeah, that's really funny because my Mars just progressed into Libra at 0 degrees.
Oh, wow. Fascinating.
Right? Because I was born with it in Leo at 18, and then it's now there. And so
Wow.
I'm seeing this, and I'm like, oh, this should be interesting because I've always felt like Mars and Libra is exactly what you're saying, where you're thinking about everybody else and you don't know what to do because until you know how they feel, then you'll take the action because it'll feel right. And that's a man, that's hard.
It is.
That's hard. And
Maybe
Libra
maybe
is not a
me.
great place for Mars. It's just not. It's like it's
Mm-mm.
it's way too tries to be way too fair.
Yeah, absolutely. And with that too, oh, what was I thinking? The whole, what was I gonna say? The Yeah, not planning your next step until you hear of
Mhm.
what someone else is gonna do. But the workaround that I've had with this at this point is I'll still ask for someone's opinion or see what they would do just to realize, oh, I wouldn't do that.
Okay.
Yeah. And then do whatever I would do. But that's
Would
like the frustrating thing about Libra is that they're
Yeah.
like they'll sometimes do the opposite of what someone else would do just because that Libran natural way of wanting to balance
Mhm.
up against something comes in. So they're like, well, that's the only way to know what you would or wouldn't do is by balancing that off of somebody else.
I'm seeing the other side of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, Libra's really interesting. I mean, it's such a I have so much of it in my chart that I feel like I know it really, really well, but it's also, the challenge has been finding your own voice without partnership, without having to have someone there that you can you can kind of, yeah, balance everything out with. It's like,
Mhm.
uh, I think that's been the lesson my lifetime is like, well, what do I want? What do I really, really, truly want? And then seeing how that balances out with others,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they really do have a hard time um, being very Aries. Like I have had a very challenging time being more aggressive in my communication or um, expressing myself in
Mhm.
a more aggressive way, which is maybe good for some people, but it makes you like way too easy sometimes.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. Like easy to um like the fawn, like fawning
Yes.
in situations when yeah, it's like it's not necessarily wallflowery, but definitely fawning. Like, oh, okay, well, if you feel that way, then sure, we'll compromise.
Well,
It's so much
yeah,
easier.
well, I'll let you just do that, and I'll just take this shitty thing over here, and um,
Or
it's
how
so
many or how
what
many times you like plan your day based off of someone else's schedule or what someone else is
I
planning
mean,
their day.
right.
It's like essentially your Venus around the sun, right?
Mhm.
You're revolving around someone else's universe.
So, and that shows up just with kids, right? Now it's like I just if the kids have the schedules, then my day is planned around that for sure. But when
Yeah.
it's my time, when I'm alone, oh, I thank God I have so much Scorpio, because I can definitely dive into other things that I love to do that have nothing to do with anyone else.
Mhm.
But I mean, it's definitely finding a balance. So this will be interesting having this Mars entering Libra and coming to that south node, but it won't come to the south node till probably later in the year. I
Yeah,
mean, a month later in the year.
let's take a look when that is. So Mars will conjunct the South Node on October 3rd.
Word. Okay.
And then it'll be applying into a square with Pluto and a trine with Saturn, and in conjunct with Neptune, in opposition with the North Node, of course, and then an in conjunct to Uranus. So all the outer planets.
Yeah.
So big shifts and changes for a lot of people regarding like how they are
Taking
gearing their
action.
actions, like how
Mm,
they're like moving in through the world physically changes or is up for debate or renegotiation.
yep, that makes sense.
So this might be a time for renegotiations with contracts,
Mm,
um, with, all the unions, because the Libra, and this will also be Libra season at this point, is contracts. Your verbal,
right.
nonverbal, social, business, all contracts. And so when Mars hits that south node, it could be a breaking away from, it could be a
Mm,
renegotiation.
revising.
I've been saying, what was that?
Revising. Yeah.
Yeah, revising on old contracts.
Okay. That's good. Good little snapshot ahead.
Yeah. And then on the 28th, Uranus goes retrograde. So let's go back on the 28th. So then at this point, all of the outer planets will be retrograde, Mercury and Venus and Chiron. So we've got Mercury, Venus, Uranus, Neptune, Saturn, and Pluto all retrograde.
Wow. Okay. That
hmm By the 28th. 28th, 29th, depending on your location.
time zone. What does that mean?
Oh, that's a lot. Just don't expect to get a lot done. That's for sure. Even
Okay.
though August, the end of August is typically when we start to ramp up. A lot of
Yeah.
businesses start to ramp up for the end of the season or for the end of the year. So this might be kind of a difficult end of year season for businesses. Because there just might be a lot of setbacks, a lot of delays, a lot of miscommunication, a lot of errors that go through human errors, technical errors. Um, I
And
even
that's what I was thinking with that UPS strike.
Oh, right, yeah, you were
Mhm.
mentioning before we started recording you prepping for the holiday
R-
season.
Right. So that looks like if that's the case, um, yeah, you're exactly what you're saying. There's gonna be
Mhm.
a lot of sudden changes. What would you say, not what would you say, when does your Uranus go direct again? How long is the cycle of that?
This one's a quite a long one. It's a couple of months. Uranus will turn direct. Let's see when exactly.
Oh, January.
Um, doo, 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 doo. January 27th.
Okay. Wow,
Yeah.
that is a long cycle.
Yeah, and Uranus, not all of us will completely acknowledge or even notice Uranus retrograde,
Okay.
because it's such a fine-tuned planet that um, some astrologers would even argue that not everyone even is attuned to Uranus, that
Mm.
not everyone even has, you know, within their own energetic principle to even acknowledge or connect with Uranian energy.
Right.
So it won't affect everyone, but the people that it will affect will notice a change in your dynamics and relationship to your community and also the friend groups that you have. You just might see a it's kind of like when all the dust settles or when I can just imagine water like debris settling in water. Like it's a time when things start to just kind of reorganize itself
Okay.
among groups and communities.
That's yeah, that's super interesting. Mine's actually conjunct to my midheaven in my 10th.
Okay.
So that's probably why I'm feeling that need to get work stuff um, in alignment before this upcoming retrograde. And then what you're saying, even for the fall season. So
Yeah.
that would make that would make sense.
So we can take a look at the US chart because it'll affect like Uranus is really effective and we can look at the bigger like mundane shifts and changes,
Right.
which in the United States chart will be in the 6th house of employees.
This is where
So
we were. Yeah, this is where we were going with that Jupiter kind of coming. Though Jupiter's retrograde there, right? Oh, Jupiter is
no,
it?
it will be retrograde in September. So
Okay,
but Uranus, yeah, we'll start out with Uranus and then Jupiter shortly after will go retrograde in September. So, yeah, by September, we'll have
my
all
God,
of the planets retrograde. Luckily,
at
Venus.
Mars,
Oh, let's see. I think there will be at one point.
Mars too.
Oh, they just miss each other. So Venus goes direct the same day that Jupiter goes
Jupiter,
retrograde.
right? Remember that. Um,
So, mhm,
what day is that? Oh, it's September 3rd, 4th. Okay,
yes.
I think that's Memorial Day weekend, right? Is it or Labor Day weekend? Labor Day weekend,
Oh, interesting.
right around there.
Interesting.
A
So that's
big
interesting.
wedding time. So would that be a
Oh,
good time to make a commitment? Um, I don't know.
after Venus turns
After,
direct, but then just be ready for a lot of delays potentially and miscommunications. Um, But however, yeah, like what you were saying, starting relationships during Venus retrograde is not all bad. It's a really great way to connect with your like it's um like I always sometimes recommend people date not for the purpose of finding some like a forever person,
right.
but just for getting to know yourself a bit better.
Oh, like knowing
And
what you like and dislike.
yeah, just to
Mhm.
explore and experiment what's out there to even know what you like. So Venus retrograde during Leo season is or through Leo can be a really great way to just reconnect with what your passions are, that your likes and dislikes and interests by experimenting.
I love that. That makes so much sense. So not committing to anyone, not, starting a new relationship and fully committing, but trying things out,
Yeah, trying things
feeling new
out,
things.
seeing where they go. Um,
Mhm.
Yeah, having a little bit of detachment, um, but when Venus goes direct shortly after, then, you know, it'll all fall back into the They're like, well, you'll really know what you want and you'll really know what you appreciate about relationships and then want to go for that.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Well, it's been interesting because I'm here at CASA, and we've had so many weddings during this time, and with Venus retrograde, and I'm just thinking, huh, I wonder how this is all going to play out. Now it depends on that couple's chart and all sorts of different things, but it's kind of a interesting time to be making a super long commitment like that.
Right. Well, and you could
No.
argue that they've made that decision well before Venus was retrograde anyway. So it's
Right.
not like the engagement didn't happen during a Venus retrograde, or maybe it did. Maybe their engagement did happen on a Venus retrograde and they're getting married on a Venus retrograde and
And we'll see,
and
right?
then
Yeah.
we'll see what happens.
We'll see what happens. I definitely have become more in tune with what's going on in that world, just because of how many people stay here for, like, the bachelorettes and all that stuff for weddings. So it's like, oh, I get to see when people really are active in doing those things versus they totally are not doing them. There's times where it's
Yeah.
like no one is getting married, nothing is happening, and then super active times. And this has been a very active time. So I'm I was just like
Mhm.
curious about that. But
Yeah. And then I guess Leo and probably Libra season.
yes,
Mhm.
Libra season for sure.
Yeah.
Um Yeah, those are the two main times, and I always thought it was spring, like, I thought it would be, like, March or April,
Mhm.
maybe some May, but no, it's been all
That's
during.
when people are having the babies.
That's right, that's right. All the newborns, all the new babies come in.
Mhm.
Um,
Aries season, springtime, sprouts.
yeah, yeah. So is this kind of the last thing not last thing happening, but, um, the
Yeah, those
last
are the
kinda
main
the main
major
one?
things. We have some aspects throughout the month that are important in terms of like, because it will be the sun will be in the 11th house, or I'm sorry, in Leo. So there's going to be, squares that happen to all the like outer planets, like the sun is going to square Uranus. When Venus goes back retrograde, it's going to square Uranus. So there's going to be a lot of shifts and changes in general with Leo season for us, or August, because of, like I mentioned at the very beginning, whenever we're in a fixed sign season, then a lot of the planets around that fixed sign is going to be making a square to Uranus, inevitably, and a square opposition or conjunction to Uranus, which will elicit a good amount of shifting, changing, sifting, reorganizing, reorienting. So it's best to be just as flexible as possible this month because with all of the squares and fixed signs, it's going to be frustrating or annoying or irritating, but as long as you maintain that joyful or warmth that Leo radiates and just try to find the joy or pleasure in whatever it is, then you'll be able to navigate it easily.
Okay. That's a good recommendation. I know it just feels like so much. So it's like just the flexibility is a great thing to mention, because I feel like if plans seem to, even now, with even though Mercury is direct, it's like it still feels like plans keep changing on a dime.
Yeah, right. Well, and the full moon is a good initiator for us. Full moon in Aquarius on the 1st. So
Right.
that'll be a really good initiation into the
Right.
whole month of, yep, well, means I gotta just be accepting of whatever shifts and changes come my way.
Yeah.
Accept it with and turn it into a game, which is what Leo is really good at is, well, this is a new challenge for me to explore. North Node in Aries also is how can I overcome this challenge? How can I do it instinctively? How can I do it without procrastination, South Node Libra, and be direct and, all of the difficult transits and aspects happening for us for the next year and a half is an opportunity to be more direct and an opportunity to
Mhm.
be more um, initiating when it comes to making changes and doing the things that need to get done. Um,
Right. That's
Appropriate timing.
yeah, it feels like a lot of waiting too. I think that's the Saturn retrograde. But
Right.
but all great notes. And I wanted to ask you before, we end here, what you've been hearing about the alien uh stuff, and how that's playing into the astrology as well, because I feel like it's
Mhm.
totally in alignment with what's going on in the astrology. But also there's that illusionary element where it feels like the United States is like, oh, you're now wanting everybody to focus on this information, or you're releasing this information. So the skeptic in me is like, something's weird.
Right. Well, we've definitely been conditioned throughout the last century to question when there's a topic as outrageous and wild as aliens. Like, why are you talking about this now? Because they could just
Right.
easily just drop the bomb and be done with it and move on, but they use it as like little distraction
Like a carrot.
reasoning. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Like, oh, look over here. We're not
Yes.
talking about that anymore. But it's still a big deal. And if it's all moving in the direction that I've been seeing or sensing,
Right.
then it will be a huge deal going back to Uranus in the sixth house of the United States chart of how we interact with employment and workers
Mm.
because of the fact that this technology, which is what's the most intriguing aspect of this alien disclosure and kind of the theme that they're working off of more so, which is this idea that the military has advanced technology around energy that could be used in our citizens' everyday life that's being withheld from Congress. So it's not just a fact of, oh, our consciousness of who we are as humans is going to totally change, or our belief systems and religious views are going to totally change, but it's also like on a very more technical and logistics level. A very big deal because one, it means that the United States military has been functioning as its own government
Hmm.
outside of the United States government. And that's a huge, huge no no. And so the Senate, there's a hearing on the 26th. So in 2 days from this recording, there's a hearing on the military's use of secret weapon technological
Hmm.
advancements and also reverse engineering of UFOs. So David Grush's whistleblowing information has made a big impact in the White House. And so they're going to have a hearing very soon. It's going to be, I think, in the early afternoon here
Okay.
on our end, regarding, yeah, the military's use of technology.
Something to pay attention to. I know. Did you watch that The movie, The Last Century? That I
Oh, yes, I did. Yeah, yeah. And yeah, it was everything that we were talking about regarding
Yeah.
the use of technology and how it's been holding back the progression of human evolution, which is very inhumane. It's, I mean,
Mhm.
anti-life, anti-progress, and for the sake of war.
Yeah. I
And
know. It's yes, and I feel like that's so some of these alien sightings, right? How do we know if they're whether or not they're our own government, you know,
mhm.
testing vehicles on in the air, and then people are spotting them and saying, "Oh my gosh, that was a UFO."
Well, I think it's all of it. I think all of it is happening because there are so many now um, Air Force pilots that are
Right.
talking about it, and they're saying,
Right.
"Yeah, this is just a part of our training at this point that we see
Wow.
unidentified flying objects, and now it's a part of the training of, like, what do we do if we have, come across that?" And it's like a rite of passage. I've been listening to some interviews with
Oh,
pilots
interesting.
that are like, it's basically a rite of passage at this point. Like, you see your first UAP, then you've,
You're
like,
in.
you're in, you've made it
Yeah.
into
Yeah.
the crew.
But think about, like, even too, it's like all they have to do is, put a bomb on one of these things and drop it and say it was an alien. You know what I mean? Like, we don't know what it was or who it was. That's kind of where my mind goes with it. It's like, how are they using these in the military to, trick people that it's almost shifting blame, almost like it's a scapegoat.
It can be. I think I am not sure how much I always comes back to how much I trust in the competency of the of the United States government
Okay.
and military of, like, I don't know, are they even capable of having that much advanced.
Wherewithal? Really? Like, or I don't know. I mean, and it is something we can talk about on a totally different podcast because this is not totally about the astrology, but it is so interesting how it lines up with things that are in the astrology right now and with that Uranian element. So
Yeah.
something to keep an eye on for sure.
Yeah, and I think that Uranus through the 6th house for the United States is just, we've just started to see the effects of
Mhm.
what technology is going to do and how it's going to shape the employment of the United States. It's definitely going to change the way that we view labor in the United States. And
Right.
I just saw a data point that showed all the different industries that will be affected by AI the most.
Uh-huh.
And of course, at the very bottom of the list is manual labor.
Really?
They're the least affected by AI advancement and technology. The highest industry that'll be affected is basically management.
Really?
Mhm.
Oh, that's so interesting to me. I wonder if that's like management of just like companies in general?
Scheduling, managing,
Scheduling.
um, organizing, because that all can be done by AI, and then
Mhm.
also, like, data tech communications, and then
Mm.
also engineering too,
Mm.
programming,
Okay.
so all of these industries that originally or initially were the very, um, financially sound industries to
Yes.
start because programming, like, only a certain subsect of human brain can even consider or
Okay.
compute programming language, but because it's essentially a computer language. But now, if they can just program an AI to code and program, then there isn't really much use for the human brain to do those things. And computing Um, Also, even in the medical field, too, there's a
Mm,
lot of changes in regards to the medical field, which Uranus trines Neptune.
yeah.
It's trining Neptune right now as we speak. So there's a positive change when it comes to the future of healthcare, and it might help us in the long run regarding the financial aspect of it because it's so expensive, and unfortunately that
Yes.
though might mean that we are going to have less employment in certain areas, but that's for the benefit of, I think, overall everyone,
Mm.
with regards to
Wh-
finance.
What I think a big thing for Hollywood, especially just maybe because, so close to here, but the actors and the use of AI scanning faces and being
Oh,
able to use those images or the your face scan for basically for the rest of time. So it's like you sign a contract for one day's paid work, and they tell these girls they have to scan, or extras, that they want to scan your face, and basically they use it for future projects without your consent.
mhm. Yeah, that's happening, and I'm also really glad that they're striking now, but hopefully, again, like I said, hopefully it doesn't put the idea into producers' minds
Think
that
it's already there, though. I mean,
yeah,
they did a whole Black Mirror on it, a whole
right,
episode of Black Mirror. Um,
right.
they did it with Indiana Jones, and using Harrison Ford's face to make him young. So the whole opening scene of that, spoiler alert, is him young. So they're doing it. It's just a matter of how far they are advanced in the technology
Mhm.
to do a whole movie of it.
Yeah. Yeah, and look, Hollywood's going through a nodal return, so there's
Oh,
a whole new era of Hollywood happening,
wow.
unfolding right now as we speak. And
Wow. Look at that.
yeah, Uranus going through the seventh house, Saturn going through the fifth house of Hollywood. Not a fun time when Saturn's going through the fifth house. It's very restrictive. There's a lot of focus on like structure, rules, and the regulation of how to express yourself creatively. So it's not a free form creative expression. It's very restrictive in what is
Mm. Shown.
shown or accepted or brought out. Fifth house is, yeah, the
That seems right, because I feel like everything that they're doing is specific to meet like equality quotas versus it being true to the storyline.
oh, yeah. Yeah, and yeah, it limits creativity too when there's so much structure that you have to adhere to. It's like,
Yeah. You can't be
well,
creative. You can't, yeah, you can't really be free with the script. I feel, if you're constantly thinking about, oh, I don't want to upset this person, or we can't do that, or it can't, we can't break that rule.
right, yeah. So we'll go ahead and see what happens there. But with the North Node in the United States, fifth house of self-expression, it might then, like, I think I heard someone say, well, with the writer's strike, we're just going to see a lot more reality TV um,
Right.
come out, which is very fifth house, I think.
Is it fifth house reality TV?
I think so for sure. It's just the everyday drama of
Right.
life, and sometimes like the pettiness of it, and like the drama of romances and
Re-
relationships between people. Just, yeah.
right. I mean, people got so used to seeing that in the in the 2000s, that they were obsessed with certain shows that were Jersey Shore, which I think is coming back, right? That one's coming
Oh,
back.
yeah, it is.
So a lot of that, um, which, love it or hate it, I always feel that Muse itself, the actual store, is its own reality show. You know, you can see how these dynamics of the relationships and even with the customers and you know, I have 3 young Hollywood actors that work at the store. It's like I could see how this would make a really great show, but it's also like there's scriptedness in some of these. I mean, it feels false. As real as they try to make it out to be. It's like, no, this something is scripted here. This is not. There's no way there's this much drama.
Oh, right, for sure. I like to
Yeah.
I like watching reality TV and then trying to find the scripted part.
Right?
Be like, "Oh, they totally told that person to say that," and
Yes.
then create the drama because they know this, this, and this. I it's so bad, but I started watching just out of pure curiosity
Yeah.
because everyone was talking about it.
What?
Love Island.
You
It's so
did?
bad. It's
Is
horrible.
that the UK
Horrible.
one? Is that
I've been watching the US one, but someone
okay?
told me that it's in the UK, like, on daytime television. I'm like, "How is this?"
Yes.
This is like softcore porn. This is basically
Really?
yeah. But, it's so fascinating to watch, like, because 'cause they're essentially, like, guinea pigs in
Yeah.
an enclosed space that seems to not have, like, natural daylight or something. Like, it's all
Like neon
like
light.
simulated, and they don't have access to the outside world. They're just holed up
Really?
in this one space. So, like, for someone who's really interested in psychology, it's obviously like really
Oh gosh,
fascinating because
yeah.
they'll just put people in, like, they'll put new potential lovers into the mix to like change things up. And you're thinking, like, oh my God, they totally did that, like, put that person in there because they know that that's this person's type, and
Oh,
they know that that relationship is faulty right now, so they wanna see if that relationship holds weight. It's
oh
just,
my
like, pretty
gosh.
I'm just like,
It's a
"This
total psychological experiment,
it
right?
totally is." Which I think a lot of these reality TV shows are. Like, how many
Yes,
psychologists are behind this? Or, like, what university is funding this experimentation? Because
right.
it is actually really fascinating, to watch the behavior patterns and, like, how people react
So
emotionally and
well,
yeah.
it's like I think that's similar to Big Brother, right? Big Brother is like everybody in a house with a camera, and it's like, that sounds horrible.
Yeah, it does.
Um, The other one, though, I think is really interesting and is Bachelor and Bachelorette, and I feel like that's super scripted,
Mhm.
or they tell the person it's very edited as well, but how many relationships have actually come from that show? I'm like, is this
Yeah.
a real relationship? Like, no, a lot. Like, a lot
Huh.
of the people end up getting married and then they have kids, and
Whoa.
it's just like it's very weird. It's like, how do they select the people prior that go on? They always have a couple that are like, you know, hair triggers, you know, they
Mhm.
and or a lot of criers, like people, oh, they've known the person for 2 weeks and they're crying. It's like,
Mhm.
okay, yeah, I'm not sure if that can be real, but it's it's such an interesting thing that you're even mentioning about the social experiment, because it is. It's like a total weird setup environment, like the Truman Show, and then they put the person in and see what's going to happen. Yeah,
Mhm.
that's you might be onto something there. It's a
I would love to be like a resident astrologer in one of those shows
yes,
and like choose people behind the scenes based
based
on
on
their
the chart.
astrology. Such a
That's
Scorpio in me is just like,
a good
oh,
idea.
like,
Yeah, yeah, that's a total
who can
good
we put
idea.
together?
We should pitch that. That's it. I love it. All right. Well, thank you so much, Evelyn, for joining me today and giving us insight on this wild upcoming August we are about to embark on.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. Always a pleasure. Always
Yeah,
fun to chat and go down rabbit holes.
I know, I know. It's so fun. It's so fun. So we will talk soon and thank you again.